first of all, one of the big myths that you'll hear is that children do better in joint custody, and that studies have shown that children do better in joint custody. In other words, very, equal or roughly equal involvement of both parents. Well, that's not what the studies show. What the studies show is that the children do very well in shared custody, in shared parenting, when that has been voluntarily arrived at by the parents. There's no evidence that forcing parents into shared parenting is in children's best interest. There's very extensive evidence that it's not in children's best interest, that it works out badly for them. In fact, what I would say the research really indicates is that the parenting plan isn't really what determines how well children do. What determines how well children do is, do they have two kind and responsible parents who can reasonably well get along with each other after divorce, or are they dealing with either a parent who's abusive or dealing with two parents who absolutely cannot get along with each other no matter what? In other words, children do better when their parents get along well. And we can't mandate that. There's no way to legislate parents being on good terms post-separation. You certainly can't legislate a mother being on good terms with the man who has abused her post-separation, because that's just simply not possible for her to do unless he changes, unless he actually gets intervened with and deals with his abusiveness, unless he actually confronts his abusiveness. The only way to get along with an abuser is to capitulate, is to just let him have whatever he wants. That's the only way you can get along with an abuser. And that's not in the best interest of children to let an abuser make the decisions. That's never going to serve them well. An abuser thinks only about himself and what he wants. He does not think well about what's good for kids, and couldn't care at all about what's good for their mothers. So when you think you see, oh, shared parenting is really what's best for children, what you're actually seeing is that parents who get along well post-divorce are what's best for children, and those are the parents that choose shared parenting. So the shared parenting is actually one of the effects of the fact that the parents get along reasonably well, that they're having, a reasonably peaceful divorce. It's not the cause of why the children are doing well. The children are doing well because parents get along, and that's why they're sharing parenting. And sure, having two very loving, responsible parents involved with you is better than one. 3 is better than 2, and 4 is better than 3, and so forth. But the idea that somehow that we can mandate more involvement of both parents, and that's somehow going to lead to good impacts for children, is very misguided. And the outcome research is still so inadequate about what happens post-divorce, even in our times. It's odd how little research there is about this. But I've told you essentially what we know so far from what that research shows, except that what the research also shows is that divorce is deeply disruptive to children's lives. It just messes everything up. It messes up their relationships with their friends, and they may have to change what schools they're going to and which parent they're spending time with. And that's one of the greatest sources of pain and confusion and distress for children, is just massive disruption to everything. So one of our main goals post-separation is to look for ways to reduce disruption. And what that means is we want to try to let children's lives look as much as possible the way they did before the divorce. So if children were living in one home, then we would like them still to have a primary residence in one home where they spend the bulk of their time. And we would like them not to be constantly going back and forth between two houses for these very extensive programs of visitation, which are nice for the visiting parent, but are not good for the children. I mean, it's common in our times, it's popular in our times to have these schedules where children are spending Tuesday afternoon with dad, and Thursday afternoon with dad, and Friday and Saturday night with him, and then it's just this constant back and forth and back and forth. And they're trying to figure out, oh, where are my school books? Oh, when can I see my friends? Oops, I left these things that I need over at the other house, and so forth. So disruptive to them. And it means that with respect to contact with the parents, we need to not think that the goal is for them to have the most possible time with both parents, but what the goal actually is for them to have roughly the same amount of time with each parent that they had before. So if before the divorce, they were spending 90% of their time with one parent and 10% of their time with the other, then it'd be best to keep it looking pretty much like that after the divorce. If parenting was truly 50-50, and there are families where parenting is truly 50-50, truly half shared between each parent, well then yes, post-divorce, it would be good to have it still be pretty 50-50. But the current push from so many policy places is to say, oh, well, we want to push towards 50-50 parenting. That has nothing to do with what's good for children, because that was almost never the structure before divorce. And we want to keep it we want to try to approximate how things were before divorce. That's what's going to be the least disruptive to children's lives. That's what's going to be the least disruptive to their hearts. It's what's going to allow them to continue to have the same nature of emotional relationships that they had before with their mother and their father, and reduce the disruption to their relationship with their siblings and to their relationships with their friends and other key emotional contacts, emotional connections in their lives.